All right, welcome to my first video cast about cybersecurity. I am Dustin Mooney with TechX Cyber. Been in cybersecurity for a long time, have some thoughts I want to share with everybody, and I'm excited about this one. I've been doing some research and some product development in my own personal work life, and it caused me to go, I should talk about this. I think this is important. I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective when it comes to cybersecurity and specifically doing investigations. Not only do you have the ability to perform the assessment, understand the technical details, break those down, find the artifacts, right, and then come to the business owner, explain these things to them, I'm able to tie what these things mean to their business. And so that's really what I think I've learned is most important when it comes to cybersecurity as a consultant. I think the findings are cool. I think the technical details are fun. I think the investigation details are fun. But for somebody who's gone through an experience where they've been compromised, I think what they really want to know is, well, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to my business? How does this impact me? And so I think a lot of forensic analysts get caught up in just providing these details, right? Here's all the technical information that you need to know. In reality, there's so much more that we need to tie that to. So I'm going to do that today, and I'm going to do that with a concept that we call business email compromise. Business email compromise is the word that we use when somebody's mailbox has been taken over, when there's been unauthorized access, or when you have a hacker who has stolen credentials, who is actively logging into an employee's email box, reading their emails, forwarding their emails, and just kind of causing a bunch of problems. So that's what a business email compromise is. So I want to talk about, how does this happen? How do these occur in the first place? Because I think people may have some confusion about what's going on here. There are a couple ways that this can happen. I would say that, I'm going to throw out some random number, but this is just from my experience. I'm going to say 90% of business email compromise occur because an employee has clicked on a malicious phishing email that redirects them to what we call a credential harvesting site. So, and they've been tricked, right? And they think that they're going to a legitimate place. Some types of things that we see happen is, malicious email comes in, and in that email, it's asking the employee, if you want to download this document or pay this invoice, you need to log in here and type in your password. Now, the challenge is that sometimes there's a legitimate business reason for this to occur. Sometimes we need to share things and secure them with passwords. So it becomes very difficult for an employee to be able to discern, is this coming from somebody I know, or is this just something that's going to hurt me later in the future? That thought probably doesn't happen. I think there's just a assumption of trust from the email that's coming in. And, we can fix some of these things through security awareness training, doing some test phishing emails. But at the end of the day, if it's part of a normal business process and you're being asked to repeat that by a hacker, it's not going to send off a lot of red lights or red flags, It's not really going to be something that you might notice. So this is a really common technique for a hacker to do, is to send this document, say, hey, you need to access this site, type in your password. And when the employee accesses the website, we call these lookalikes. They are spoofing a Microsoft Outlook login page, or an Office 365 page, or a Gmail page, or whatever the attack method is. It's going to look like something that they're used to logging into or something that they've done before. Another interesting thing that I'm seeing that's happening in business email compromises, to make these things look a little bit more legitimate, they're adding CAPTCHA authentication in there, so you have to prove that you're a human being by clicking on which pictures are showing bicycles, right? So it kind of brings down that sense of worry, or am I doing the wrong thing here, that an employee may have, especially when they're being asked to validate who they are. It looks really, really legitimate. So these techniques are changing a lot, and the hackers are learning about how to get people to really click on things. And I think the interesting thing about this is, yes, there is this technical aspect. Yes, we do have this scenario that's playing out, but the thing that fascinates me personally is the psychological aspect behind it. It really is this game of cat and mouse where you have an employee who may be really well versed at doing something, but the hacker is constantly trying to find ways to trick them, and they're constantly evolving. So most of the time, business email compromise occurs because an employee clicks on a phishing link, gets tricked into supplying their credentials, and now the hacker has captured theirs and they're using them. There are some other less common things that could, in theory, happen to happen for a business email compromise to occur. Another one may be passwords for sale on the dark web. If you have a password that you're reusing that's been compromised, it's for sale on the dark web. A hacker may know if it's tied to your work account, and let's say you've used that email address to log into a popular website. That popular website gets compromised. Your password's been stolen. That password's also tied to your work email address now. Well, most of the organizations these days are on Exchange, Office 365, or an Outlook. And so it's not really too hard for a hacker to go, well, let me try and see if they have a web access page where I can log in. So that's another option. We don't see that one a lot. I don't see that one a lot. Most of the time it's a phishing website. Some other ways, one other thing that's coming to my mind, and again, this is a little bit less rare, a little bit more of a difficult attack. I would say where an employee has a malware infection and there's either a remote access Trojan or there's a keylogger on the machine that's capturing the keystrokes and sending them out. Again, don't see a lot of this happening for email compromises. Have seen these compromises occur in other scenarios, but it is possible that this could be a way that a hacker could get a business email password. So let's just assume that somebody's logged in, they've accessed this phishing site, they've supplied their password. So if you've ever sat into one of my presentations or you've ever read any document that I published, you'll quickly start to realize that there's these terms that I come to very often, and one of those is the CIA. That's the Confidentiality, Integrity, and Availability Triad. So confidentiality being, can I keep the information secret that I want to remain secret? Integrity being, can I trust that the information that I'm using, the data that I'm processing, has not been changed or altered? And then finally, availability. Can I get to the system? Can I get to the data that I need to do my job? So I want to talk about what the impacts to the CIA are when a business email compromise occurs. Most of them are going to fall into the confidentiality category. That's the first one of the CIA. So confidentiality, again, is, can I keep the information secret that I want to remain secret? So if you just close your eyes for a second and think about what type of information you communicate over email, and think about how much of that information you want to keep secret. What sort of data is in there? Are we sharing Excel spreadsheets with customer data? Are we sending invoices? Are we talking to the CEO? Are we complaining about our company, right? So there could be a lot of information in there that you don't want the whole world to know about. I would say that this is probably one of the most important places you don't want people to get into. And when that occurs and a hacker is entered into your email box, your confidentiality has just gone out the window. All of those secret conversations, all of the business discussions, all of the numbers and the financial transactions that are occurring in the communications of your email have now been exposed to an unauthorized third party. So we have a breach of confidentiality. Now, let's move over to integrity. And when we talk about business email compromise, one of the things that happens the most is a hacker will attempt to jump in the middle of a financial transaction, change the numbers or say that the numbers have been changed for a routing and account number. And then we have this wire transfer fraud that happens when an unsuspecting victim sends the information or the money to the changed numbers. Okay. This is an example of attack on integrity. So the integrity of the information, the integrity that you're trusting that that routing number and that account number is exactly what you expect it to be as being on the receiving end has now changed. So you can no longer trust that that information is accurate because it's not. You may think that it is, but it's not. Okay, so this is an attack on integrity when a hacker does this. Availability, I would say that this is a little bit less of an impact, although it could disrupt your business operations. You know, you could have some downtime. You could have somebody like me that needs to come in and collect from an email box and you need to stay out of it for a certain amount of time. So a little bit less impacts. And honestly, like I think this one goes in order, right? CIA, the highest impact being to your confidentiality, medium impacts to your integrity, depending on what happens, and then availability is a little bit lower. So when these impacts to CIA happen, we always want to come back and tie that back to the business. So what does this mean for our business? Now, I really think cyber liability insurance is awesome. I think it's great. I think every company should have it. But one little beef that I have with these cyber liability providers and MGAs and everybody out there telling you that it's the best thing ever, I'm sorry, but it's not. It is good, it is important, but it's not the end-all be-all, because cyber liability insurance does absolutely nothing to restore your CIA. I want to say that again. Cyber liability insurance does absolutely nothing to restore your CIA. Once that information, that confidential information, has been read, it's gone. It's out there. The information is no longer secret, especially if a hacker forwards your emails out of your inbox to an external account, which, by the way, happens very often in a business email compromise. So that cyber liability is going to cover the financial impact that may happen through the wire transfer fraud or having to pay somebody like me to come in and do an assessment. So it does shift the financial burden, but at the end of the day, there's still all these other impacts that we need to consider. So if you're listening to this, you bought cyber liability insurance, you're feeling pretty good, great. Good for you. I really think that's a good first step. But there's a lot of other things that we need to do to protect the CIA. So anyways, a little rant there. Let me come back to the business email compromise. So a couple things can happen to the business. First of all, we've got the impacts to financials, right? Most of the time when these things are occurring, we think about the intent of the hacker. What are they trying to do? What's the point of all of this? And really what they're doing is they're looking for financial transactions. This is the quickest and easiest way for them to make money. They've been very successful in the past. These are very common attacks. We see this over and over and over again. So how do they do this? Like, what happens here? So a hacker will sit in the mailbox and they will sit there and wait and read. They will sit there and wait and read and wait for a conversation about a financial transaction. If they get desperate, I've seen this, if they get desperate, they may go back in time and try to strike up an old conversation about a financial transaction. I have seen that happen as well. Okay. So they're looking for money. They're looking for ways that they can easily steal from you. So how do they do this? How do they know what's going on? So I've seen a lot of different techniques, but some of the most common ones are the hacker will set up rules for your inbox to move emails that match particular patterns with particular words in there. So I saw a case recently where a manager had asked a financial person to handle a transaction. All of those managers' emails were now being sent to a different folder because that hacker learned, oh, this person is directing some of the financial team to conduct these transactions. I need to watch what this person is saying. Even though they weren't handling the transaction, they were conducting them. So I saw that person get attacked. The other things that we'll be doing is, not everybody, but a lot of people are on QuickBooks, right? Intuit. You get emails from Intuit for invoices. I've seen this over and over and over again. The hacker will set up a rule that anything that comes in from Intuit, they're going to take a look at it. They're going to put it in a specific folder. Okay. They want to know when that shows up. So they're going to sit there. They're going to wait and read and wait and read. And this is the confidentiality problem. Because, yeah, they're looking for financial transactions, but what else are you talking about that they're getting their eyes on? Because they may be interested in something else. And that takes me to my next point. When this happens, we use two words to explain this attack. Or it could be two words. Usually it's one or the other. So at the beginning of attack, typically when an employee receives that phishing email, they click on it. We call this a threat of opportunity. So most of the time the hacker is sending out a massive amount of information, a massive amount of emails to many, 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 many different people, just hoping that somebody will bite on that bait, right? And then when they do, they take over. Okay, so this is a very wide net approach. Another one that we have is more of a targeted attack. This is when they're actually coming after you specifically. So there are some different things that happen in these two scenarios. Maybe I'll go and do another video specifically about what that looks like. But most of the time we're experiencing a threat of opportunity. Okay, so as the hacker reads your emails, as they look at what you're talking about, the threat of opportunity can quickly shift to a targeted attack. So what do I mean by that? I have seen hackers compromise email, see that the person that they've compromised has cryptocurrencies. Hackers love cryptocurrency, right? So maybe they get an email from Coinbase or Gemini or any of these crypto.com, right? Any of these trading platforms that come in, and now they have a new way to make money. So now the attack becomes more targeted. So they have your email address, they have your name, they have your account. Guess what they're going to try to do? They're going to try to phish you to get into your cryptocurrency account. Same thing with banking and login information. So these attacks can shift. It's not just the hacker getting into your email. They're looking for other ways to move laterally. And speaking of moving laterally, another thing that we see a lot is the hack tends to expand. Every single instance I've ever done in a business email compromise, the hacker has extracted all of the contacts from that inbox and then reached out using legitimate credentials, using a trusted email address that they have taken over to communicate with business partners, customers, vendors, anybody else in that email box is now receiving an email from a trusted source, or they believe that it's a trusted source, and that is making them expand the attack because people are trusting the emails that are coming in. They know your email address, although it's been compromised. They trust it anyways. They don't know that. And the attacker continues to try to harvest more credentials. And so once they have a foothold in one place, they tend to spread out. It's all about getting as many as possible. So let's go back to the CIA, right, and the impacts to the business. So impacts are definitely related to CIA, but there's a lot more. So there can be impacts to your reputation, to your financials, right? We talked about financials. This one's about your reputation. Also kind of about integrity, right? People want to trust that you're emailing them legitimate documents, that you're sending them legitimate invoices, that if they're paying you, they're not being tricked, okay? So the integrity of the information coming out of your email account is just as important as the confidentiality. People want to trust you. And if you start sending spam emails, not you, but the hacker on your behalf, start sending spam emails and viruses and more phishing things, right? It's just a mess. So it's definitely not a good look. So there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen after a business email compromise occurs. So I think the last thing I want to do is I want to talk about what happens if you don't. What happens if you don't investigate a business email compromise? The hacker stays there, right? So let's say you just go change the password. All of your emails are still out. Other interesting things I've seen happen is when we see wire transfer fraud, that doesn't mean that that's the only company that received a bad wire transfer attempt. Sometimes multiple companies have received it out of your inbox, and it might just be sitting there waiting for somebody to go, oh, okay, I need to pay this invoice. So just locking them out is not the end. You can't do that, right? We really need to do an investigation to find out how deep does this go, how many people are impacted outside of your organization, what sort of lateral movement occurred, do we have any evidence of data exfiltration? And this is a big one about what happens if you don't. So if you don't do an investigation and you've had data exfiltration, if email with all of your customer lists has left the building, has gone to the hacker's external email account, now you have a data breach. And you have a data breach of what we call non-public information. So by the way, all 50 states have a breach notification law. And so if you meet certain thresholds for the amount of data that's been exposed as well as the type of data, technically you have to report to the state attorney general. So that could be a whole nother discussion. But I think one thing that I would just comment on is that nobody is checking, but states are becoming more stringent. Laws are becoming tighter. The scope of what defines a data breach is expanding. Okay, so while we may be able to get away with it, although it's pretty unethical, not reporting a data breach could be an option. But again, you still have impacts to the customers that are relying on you. You still have cleanup that needs to happen. And the interesting thing is when a hacker knows that they are able to get into your email account, guess what? They come back. So let me tell you why they do that. And let me tell you what policy is missing that causes them to do this. So first of all, they know that they've phished your employee. They know that you're able to be tricked. So that possibly tells them that you have not performed adequate cybersecurity awareness training. Your employees may not have been tested enough to see if they know how to spot a phishing email. They already know they got you once. Maybe they can get you again. Now, if you listen to anything, If you want to focus in on anything that I have said, this is probably the most important thing. You could completely ignore everything. This is what you need to listen to. A hacker knows that if they get your password and they log in successfully, that you do not have multi-factor authentication turned on. Okay? It tells them that you do not have multi-factor authentication turned on. And I promise you that if you turn on multi-factor authentication, you can stop 99% of these attacks. You will likely stop 100% attacks that are considered threats of opportunity. If you start experiencing a targeted attack where your multi-factor is being attempted to be compromised, you've got way bigger problems. And you're probably going to need to call a cybersecurity expert. So we can eliminate this problem by simply turning on multi-factor authentication. One other small thing, when you do it in Office 365, don't click enforce. Make sure you click enable. If you enforce it, you'll lock everybody out. Some lessons learned with some clients I've worked with before. And prep your employees. Let them know that this is coming and that it protects your business and that they need to be on board. We need everybody to participate. So let me just wrap it up here, getting a little bit long. I just want to talk a little bit about what happens in the business email compromise. So in short, hacker steals your credentials, logs into your email box, monitors your email, waits for particular juicy conversations, and when these things happen, they jump in the middle. Most of the time, this is for financial gain, and they also attempt to move laterally. They also will attempt to impersonate you further, and there's a lot of impacts to your business. There are financial impacts, reputational impacts, CIA impacts, and many other impacts that we need to be worried about and things that we need to be concerned about. So that's why it's important to actually go through the business email compromise assessment, find out how deep it goes, find out what happened, and really get to the bottom of this and make sure it doesn't happen again. I think that's everything. So thanks for listening. Just off the cuff there, if you have any questions, my email address is going to be at the below down here. You can also visit my website and check out my blog. I think I'm going to write a quick little blog about some of this. And feel free to reach out to me. Would love to talk to anybody that wants to have a further conversation about this. And thank you for listening.